So that you can also hear me, right? There's someone whose name isn't visible. Okay, Rishabh. All of you from English too, right? Yes, what's going on? Are you able to hear me properly or not? Suraj, Rishabh, Ashish, Anurag did respond to me a while ago. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, what week are you in? Have you started watching lectures on classes or not? Okay, that just leaves you with me, Anurag. You can, which week of lectures are you in? Are you in the first week or the second week?
Second week leader. They are in week 2.
No, I'm asking them so that they can respond to me whether they have reached week two or not.
Okay, okay.
Week one. Okay. So if it's week one, you mean you have only started, you just started a few days ago. Okay. All right. Okay, in that case, I think we'll just have a quick discussion or something today. If you haven't already watched the lectures, and I just don't want to take in anything, but we can discuss a few things. If it's week one, then you probably might be looking at intonations, rhythm, what else? Figures of speech, right? So, how do you find that one? Have you watched those lectures on figures of speech and intonation and all that? You can unmute yourself and speak. We haven't restricted this one for you. I see
Yes, ma'am.
few more people.
Watch all the lectures.
You have watched all the lectures. This is week one you are talking about, right? Okay. All right. Uh, so what about the one on figures of speech? How do you find it?
I found it confusing. Like there is like
Ah,
two, three simile, and then the next one is quite similar to the simile. So it is a bit confusing whether to rightly identify the figure of speech.
uh-huh. Okay. But which one did you find confusing? Simile, okay, and simile, and what is similar to that? See, most of it, no, they're all metaphorical, right? So that this is also one question I think we've had in the last session about, uh, whether something was metaphor as opposed to another figure of speech. So at the outset, you need to understand that most of these figures of speech um, that you see listed in the lecture, they all have metaphorical uses, right? And what do we understand by that? Metaphorical or you could also say idiomatic expressions, right? What's the difference between idiomatic expressions and literal expressions? So literal, as the name suggests, the meanings are quite clear from the word and its meaning itself. But that's not the case with idiomatic expressions. That is, their meanings are derived from not the literal meaning of the word, but it is based on figurative language. So this figure of speech is basically right? So in figures of speech, don't try and read these figures of speech and try and by heart what those are. I would instead suggest you to look at the examples that are given in the lecture slides, right? So try and understand those examples more clearly. If you're able to do that, then the identification part of the figures of speech becomes easier. I know when it comes in, something like a poem or something, it becomes a little difficult. But I think for most of the questions, you get an underlined pair of word or a phrase which you need to actually give the figure of speech for. It's usually not the whole of the excerpt, and we don't have any questions wherein you are asked to pick out the figure of speech. Usually it is underlined for you, and you're just asked to identify it. So spend some time with this lecture if it is confusing. But if there are particular figures of speech that you haven't understood, that you read through and you did not understand what it meant, that you can ask now. You want me to share the PPT for figures of speech? I think maybe we can go through them one by one. Just give me a moment. I'll just figure that out and share it. But meanwhile, if you have questions, then you can ask. The voice is not clear. Is it so?
It's clear, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It is confusing because you are looking at it for the first time, or maybe you're looking at it after a very long time. So keep looking at it. You will be all right. Let me just get back to that. Find out those PPTs for this so that maybe we can work on it together. Just give me a minute. Yes, yes,
PPTs used for.
KitKat, is it an example of alliteration? What is alliteration? You'll have to first know that. Okay. Can you tell me what alliteration is?
PPTs. Figures of speech. I'll just share the screen with you. Just let me know if you're able to see it. See, if the font and all is, I think if you've joined in through your own devices, you can zoom in and see. Okay, so basically, just to give you a quick introduction of what it means, I think we already spoke about it. Figures of speech basically are used for metaphorical meanings, okay, or idiomatic expressions, as I told you. They simply mean that whenever you have something like a figure of speech, they don't give you the literal meanings. That is, they do not give you the meanings that is usually understood as the meaning of the word. It would have a different meaning than that. The question you are asking about alliterations, see, first thing first, whether you're talking about alliterations or you're talking about assonance or consonants, you need to keep in mind that we are talking about a figure of speech which works on repetition. Okay, now you listen this one carefully. I'm going to leave this thing in the chat box for you. And I think this should help you to learn it a little better also. So you may have about 10 or 15 odd figures of speech in the lecture. What you are required to do is you classify them again into different categories so that it is easier for you to learn and understand them. So the first category of figures of speech would be based on this aspect, which is repetition. Okay. Keep this in mind. If you can make a note of this somewhere, you can do that. Or if you're able to remember it, otherwise, I think that's fine as well. Right? So the first classification of the figures of speech would be a figure of speech that is based on repetition. Now, examples of figures of speech that are based on repetitions would be the one that you just mentioned here, right? Alliteration. Alliteration is first one. Then there's another one, which I just mentioned, that is assonance. Then there is something called consonants. And there's one more, which you call the sibilants, right? Now, if you understand consonants and assonance and all of these, then sibilants is just easy for you to make sense of, right? Keep in mind all these four figures of speech that's listed in your chat box, they're all based on repetition of some element in the word or the pair of word or the phrase given, right? Just a moment. Okay. So, what do you want me to repeat, Anurag? So, most of this is going to be based on repetition. Okay. What did you want me to repeat? Repetition part. Oh, repetition part means, see, the figures of speech that's mentioned here, all four of them are based on repetition, and some part of it would be repeated. That's the difference. Okay. What the part that is repeated, the difference in the part that is repeated is what basically constitutes the difference between all the four given here. So in alliteration, let's see. If you have already read this lecture or if you have gone through this already, what is alliteration? What repetition do you see in that?
Letters.
Sorry?
Letter repetition.
Letters. We will check it out here and find out. This one, alliteration. Someone has already asked if Kit Kat is an example of alliteration. It is. But more than understanding what is being repeated in alliteration? First sound, right? The first sound of two adjacent words. So this is an important condition. If you have to mark something as an alliterated pair of words, then the repetition of the sounds has to be the specific condition required is that both the sounds have to be the first sounds of the word, and the words must be placed adjacent to each other. Okay, so the first sound of both the words and these words must be placed adjacent to each other. These two conditions are important in alliteration. First sound and both these sounds or the words need to be placed adjacent to each other. Look at the example. So the question you asked, Kit Kat, right? Peppa Pig, PayPal, Coca-Cola. What do you see here? You have two pairs, and then the first sound in both the words is the same. Basically, they repeat. The same, or you can say they repeat. This is an example of alliteration. Somebody says the voice is not properly reaching you. Is that so for everyone, or is it just for me? Sorry, for just a few of you. Is it good enough?
It's a bit low for me.
Is it? If you can hear it more or less, then it's fine. It's low. I don't know. I think in between I got a call, so the connection may have been lost. But is it okay now? Okay. The volume is on full. Okay. Anyway, if it is too much of a problem, just let me know. As long as you can hear, I think it should be okay. All right. Okay. So this one is alliteration, right? Uh, wherein the repetition is based on again sounds. What kind of sounds? The first sound of both the words. And the second condition is that both these sounds will have to, sorry, both these words will have to be placed adjacent, that is next to each other, like you see in the examples. They cannot be far apart from each other. They'll have to sit close to each other to fulfill the condition of alliteration, right? So this is alliteration. Now, assonance, anybody? That is also based on repetition of sounds, but what kind of sounds?
Vowel sound.
Vowel sounds. Okay. Now, they are vowel sounds, but do we have the condition of adjacency required here?
No.
No, right? You, unlike in alliteration, you don't have to have the words placed adjacent to each other when it comes to assonance or consonants or sibilants, right? All these three are also based on repetition of sounds, but how are they different from alliteration? That is, the condition of adjacency is not required. The word could be somewhere a little away from the first word also. Only condition required is that the sound must repeat in the second and the third or the fourth, whatever it is, right? No adjacency required. But the difference is based on what kind of sounds are repeated. In assonance, the kind of sound that's repeated are the vowel sounds. In consonants, they are the consonant sounds. In sibilants, there are particular kind of consonant sounds. We call them sibilants. Do you see this one? S, sh, z, right? These sounds are called as sibilants. So if these are the sounds that are being repeated in the words, then you call it a figure of speech that is sibilants, right?
Sicilian.
Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. Any confusions, anyone?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, one
We,
second, can you explain, ma'am? Second, ma'am.
right. What do you want to know? What did you not understand?
That last portion, civilians and three other two terms.
Sibilants, sibilants are, see, they are all in assonance, consonants, and sibilants. The repetition is based on the sounds, right? The figure of speech is basically the repetition of sounds. But in assonance, the repeated sounds are vowel sounds. In consonants, it's the consonant sounds. In sibilants, again, they are consonant sounds, but they're a special kind of consonant sounds. Basically, the sounds sh, z, right? These are the sounds that get repeated in the sibilants kind of figure of speech. Okay, you look at the examples here. The first one, you have assonance, right? Can you tell me which part of this is assonance? Actually, color coded, not difficult for you. But I think,
In jail, in jail is I and jail is I is repeated.
yeah, I think in the first example, though, what is marked as assonance is wrong. You look at the second example.
Ma'am, here I is repeated.
Yeah, it should have been E, not I. It should have been E and E. But you forget about the first one. Can we look at the second question? Too cool for school. So assonance sound that's being repeated here is the oo sound, like the long oo sound, the one that is coded in pink, right? So that is a case of assonance, right? And the l sound that you hear see in school and school, this is an example of consonants because they are consonant sounds that are being repeated, right? So you also see that in pool and school, they are not located adjacent to each other, right? There's another word that's between it. But then for assonance, consonants, and sibilants, adjacency is not a condition. So it doesn't matter. Same thing in chits and dips, right? E and E give you examples of assonance, right? In chits and dips, you have E sound. They are they give you an example for assonance. Similarly, the last two sounds, right? F and S in chits and dips, they constitute for consonants. Now, let me see if there is one for sibilants. Yeah. So this one, this particular slide, this one must be very commonly heard, right? You will know she sells seashells on the seashore. So these sounds, right? Sh, s, z, all of them. Even the fourth example, sorry, the sixth example that you have here, simple Simon. Okay. or hear the loud alarm bells, brazen bells. So repetition of the s sound constitutes for the figure of speech that you call as sibilance. All right? Understood? Any confusions here, anyone? Okay, so keep this in mind. Billboard a part of alliteration, yes, another. Yes. Okay. So based on repetition, then you have these four figures of speech. Keep that in mind that all of them are based on repetition. Only the part that gets repeated varies in each of it, and you need to know what they are. Simile. Simile is basically again a figure of speech that's used for comparison, right? And what happens in comparison? There is direct comparison, right? Do you have direct or indirect comparison? Let me ask you first, without telling you everything. Do we have direct comparison in simile, or do we have indirect comparison?
Indirect comparison.
Sorry, what was that? Direct or indirect?
Indirect.
Indirect, right? Why? Because you're saying something is like something. You're not saying something is exactly that thing. You're saying something is like something, or something is as something, right? Like the example you see here. Oh, my love is like a red rose. You're not saying that my love is a red rose. You're saying my love is like a red rose. So this is indirect comparison. Whereas in case of metaphors, what happens? There's more of a direct comparison. When you say my love is
Metaphor.
a red rose, if you say my love is a red rose, that's a metaphor. If you say my love is like a red rose, then that is a simile. Right? Simile is indirect comparison. So, like repetition, the second kind of classification for figures of speech is comparison. And that could be either direct comparison or indirect comparison. For direct, you have metaphor. Indirect, you have simile. Right? Let's look at a few more. So see these examples, right? So this is basically your lecture slide. If you haven't seen this already, please look at this one first, read it a couple of times and get a grasp of these things, okay? Actually, the examples in these slides are more than enough for you to understand how to go about with these things, okay? So as a face as dull as lead, cheeks like the blushing cloud, eyes as bright as a blazing star, bold as a hawk, as steady as a clock, right? All of them examples of similes. And metaphors, icing on the cake. Okay? So icing on the cake is basically a metaphor you use to refer to the better part of something. Okay? Silence is golden. So direct comparison. Silence is not like a golden thing, it is gold itself, right? Life is a roller coaster ride, right? All the world's a stage and all the men. So world's a stage. This is the metaphor, right? The world is being called the stage, direct comparison. All the men and women merely players. Hmm? So men and women are metaphor used as metaphors for players. Okay. That is that. Personification is easy for you again. Comparison, but you are there's another kind of figures of speech, figure of speech based on comparison. So in personification, this is a kind of figure of speech where you attribute human-like qualities to inanimate, otherwise inanimate objects, right? So you personify a tree. You talk about qualities that are usually found in human beings to be found in inanimate objects, and it could be anything. It can be a tree, it can be a flower, it can be something else, right? So look at these. The stars wink, right? Wink, or call or say or sleep. These are all used with objects that are otherwise inanimate or non-human, right? That's personification. In doubt here?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, paradox. Paradox.
It is like a contradiction of whatever is being
Yes.
said.
So this is the third category, right? So the first one was figures of speech based on repetition. Second, we looked at comparison. I don't know if you've covered all of them in comparison. Let's see if we have more. But for the time being, because we have paradox now, we'll look at the third category, that is contrast, right? So the third kind of figure of speech is based on contrast, and paradox is one among that, right? Paradox is what someone was saying. When you want to present a contradictory or
Contradiction.
contrasting. Correct. You're right. So either you say contradicting facts or contrasting facts. You use something like a paradox. And remember, paradox is more like a statement or situation. Unlike in the case of simile, metaphor, or the other figures of speech that we discussed, this may not be given in a phrase or a pair of words or something. Usually, paradox as a figure of speech appears in a statement or a situation. Like, look at the examples given here. Men work together whether they work together or apart. Right? So, what do you see here? When you look at the different parts of that given sentence, they individually look like true statements, right? Or sorry, when you look at different parts of the sentence, they might look like contradictory parts. But when you read them together, you know that okay, there is a meaning that is generating out of it. Like look at the first sentence: men work together, whether they work together or apart. So you look at the two parts separately, you will feel like okay, if men work together, they work together. Then the question of working apart doesn't arise. But you read it together and you know that as a whole, the sentence or the situation does make a true, it makes for a true statement, right? So men work together, whether they work together or apart. Okay. Similarly,
Ma'am,
second one, this is
can
the
you
more. uh,
can you explain this first example?
Look at the second sentence. No, all animals are equal. Now, is that a true statement? All animals are equal. No, this is an imaginary situation. You imagine, say, people, right? All. This is a statement from George Orwell's Animal Farm. So,
Yes, ma'am, I've read
all
that book.
animals. You read it. So look at this. All animals are equal, but
Yes, ma'am.
some are more equal than others. Okay. So is that true? You can ask a question like, if everyone is equal, then how can some be more equal than you? But then when you read it in the larger sense, you know that this is a true state, right? We say people are equal, but we know certainly that not everybody is equal. Some people would definitely be a little more higher up in terms of their resources and other access when compared to others, right? So individually, when you look at these sentences, they look like contradictory statements. However, when you look at the statement or the situation as a whole, you know that this is right. Okay, so paradox is it's a complicated and more advanced sort of a figure of speech, mostly used in social commentary or political commentary, right? This is a kind of figure of speech which is used when you don't want to talk about things in the direct way, right? You want to comment on a situation, but then you don't want to make it more direct. You want to keep it a little indirect in its representation, right? So this kind of figure of speech it's more advanced. It's used mostly in advanced writing. In normal speech and all, you may not find it as much. Okay. Anybody, any question here? Dhruv?
Ma'am, can you explain this third example? I must be cruel to
Uh,
be kind.
I must be cruel to be kind. This is again taken out of a situation in Shakespeare's Hamlet, right? So, okay, let's not go into the literature part, but see, you might have heard statements like people who like their children will have to like stick, right? So, basically, what does it mean? That if you have to bring up your children properly, you should also know how to punish them for the wrong things they do, right? So this statement is something similar to that, but in the uh, play Hamlet, right? There's a situation that comes like that, but the meaning is this: I must be cruel to be kind. If I have to be kind to this person, then I might have to be a little cruel in my deeds, right? Or rather, it might look like a cruelty today, but this is basically for the well-being of the person. Okay. All right, Dhruv.
Yes, got it.
So these
Yes,
kind
ma'am.
of situations, and so if you've understood from what we have discussed, most of what we call as paradox in figure of speech, they arise from a particular situation. Look at the first sentence. It is a situation or statement. So unlike your other figures of speech, they may not make sense, or they are usually not found in words or phrases or pairs. For a paradox to appear in a writing, it has to be either a statement or it needs to be about a particular situation, right? All the three examples that you see here are based on particular situations in that um, play or novel or whatever is given. But I think if you just read the statement also, you'll understand what would be an extrapolated statement from that, right? What would be the larger meaning? Okay. But paradox is based on the classification of uh, contradictory ideas being placed together. So repetition, second one comparison, and the third category is contrast or contradiction. Metaphor we did discuss. Personification was oxymoron. Oxymoron is also based on contradiction. Yes or no? Yes, right? So bittersweet experience, awfully good movie. Sweet sorrow, parting with her was a sweet sorrow. Okay? Oh, brawling love, loving hate. So this also represents a situation of contradiction, but how is it different from paradox? In oxymoron, you don't have a situation or a statement. Instead, you have two opposing words, two contradictory words placed together, right? So look at this expression that contains two words with opposite meanings and they express conflicting opinions or thoughts. Okay. Question?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay.
Ma'am, what's the
No,
difference
ma'am.
between a word and idea?
Sorry.
Ma'am, what's the difference between word and idea? Like
Word
in the
and
third
idea.
line, it's
Word
written.
and idea. There's no difference. See, ideas are represented using words, right? So in that sense, each word might have an idea to represent. That's all. Where did you find that?
Third
Ma'am,
sentence.
that
This one
oxymoron
combines
combines
contradictory words like a
contradictory words.
Oh, same thing. See, here you will have two different words having opposite meanings, and in paradox, we'll have ideas refer to situations or statements. Okay. Okay. Antithesis is also easy. This is also based on what? Two components in opposition at the same time. So again, based on contradiction and contrast. So you had paradox, second one oxymoron, and the third one here is antithesis. So look at the examples: no pain, no gain. Man proposes, God disposes. So two ideas basically in opposition to each other. That is the idea. Okay. The name itself suggests no antithesis, the opposite of what is being represented. So one part of it would be true, the other would be untrue. Right. This we discussed.
Ma'am, it is based on rhyme, right?
No, see, rhyme is not a compulsory category here. It's just that in some case it does happen, but it's not a compulsory thing everywhere. The what is compulsory is the idea that the given two things must be in opposition to each other. Rhyme is not a necessary thing. Rhyme is used so that there is some kind of you know variety added to the way it is written. But it's not a compulsory thing for the figure of speech to be. And
Okay, ma'am.
irony. Irony is also like paradox situational. So again, this is also a kind of figure of speech where you can see contrast, right? So look at this. My sister gets really scared at the sight of blood. She's a nurse. Okay. And so this also is a case where you see contradictory things being put together. So someone is a nurse and that person is afraid of blood are things that are contradictory to each other. Right? So irony, like paradox, is situational in nature, right? So you won't see words or phrases here again. Even in irony, there are situations, right? The snowball fight was rescheduled due to heavy snowfall, right? It's a snowball fight, and that is rescheduled due to heavy snowfall, right? There's a sense of contradiction here as well. The proofreader wrote, "I am committed to excellence." What's the problem here? The spelling of excellence is wrong, and this is a proofreader, right? So again, a situational irony. Next is pun. Pun is based on your, word, right? Based on difference in the meanings of the word given. So there's one word given, and based on the different possible meaning of that word, you can create a word pun. Word pun is very common. If you're someone who's you know aware of the social media, right? If you use it um, not too much, but moderately enough, you will understand what puns mean, right? Let's look at the example to understand them better. Can February March? No, but April May. Right? Can you explain that first one to me? Which words are used as puns in the first example? Can February March?
Uh,
No, but April May.
that March month is used as a kind of action, like to denote
Correct.
whether the
So March, that
month
word
of
here
April.
has two meanings. Correct, correct.
Yes, sir.
March has two meanings
And that
here. One
May
is as the name of the month, and second is the action of marching, right? Ah. And the second one,
and and the May month is also used as a kind of
correct.
when we ponder, like maybe
Uh-huh.
word is there, so it is used in
Correct.
that sense.
So the word May is also used as a pun, right? One to refer to the month May, and second to refer to the modal verb may. It may rain, in that sense, right? So this is called the word pun. Word pun is basically whenever a word can be used with two different meanings in the same sentence, right? Usually, you know that you can use only one meaning, right? When you're using a word in the sentence, but in a word pun, you can use both the meanings of the word in the same sentence without twisting its meaning, right? Without giving out a wrong meaning. That is what word pun is. Juxtaposition, again, this is a figure of speech which is used to produce contrasting effects, right? Antithesis and oxymoron, they are both, in some sense, we can call them a subset of juxtaposition, or they are, say, subcategorized under juxtaposition. So similarly, like antithesis and oxymoron, we use juxtaposition also for creating a contrasting effect, like a living dead person, right? Living dead, that part is juxtaposition, right? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So both that part, they create a juxtaposition figurative language here. Synecdoche, usually use, then you can use a part of the sentence to refer to a whole, or a whole of a sentence, a whole of a word or phrase to refer to a part, right? Look at the example. He fell fast, is the first one. How did the accident happen? He fell fast asleep on the wheels. So wheels here is a part of the vehicle which represents the whole of the car, right? So this is a part to whole synecdoche, the first sentence. We look at a second example where it is whole to part. Yeah, this one. I went out for lunch with my friends. Now, friends here refer to a certain individual and not all of the person's friends. So I went out for lunch with my friends. Okay, although it is given in plural, the reference is basically to just one person. Okay, so this is synecdoche. Either you can represent a part to the whole or a whole to represent the part. Okay, understood? Any question there? No?
No, ma'am.
Metonymy again, same thing, right? When you can substitute. So the fourth category, right? I told you about repetition. I told you about the category of comparison. The third category was of contrast, right? Now the fourth category is of substitution, right? And synecdoche is an example of figures of speech that are classified into substitution. So whole to part and part to whole, right? Similarly, another one that is used as a substitutive figure of speech is anaphora, right? Look at this example here. Stay home, stay safe. Figure of speech, anaphora is basically based on the technique of repetition, not substitution, right? Substitution is the other one we'll discuss more. Uh, in repetition, you had alliteration, assonance, consonance, sibilance. Another one is anaphora, right? So in alliteration, assonance, consonance, and sibilance, what was being repeated? What was the part that was being repeated?
First letter.
Sounds, right? Sounds, not letters, sounds. Basically, sounds were what being repeated in all those four ones, right? Alliteration, assonance, consonance, and sibilance. In anaphora, it is the word that is repeated, right? Look at this. Stay home, stay safe, right? So difference between the other four and anaphora is that in anaphora, it is the word that is repeated, not the sounds. In all the other four, they are the sounds. The sounds are the one that gets repeated. In anaphora, it's the whole word that gets repeated, right? So stay home, stay safe. And this example of poem titled The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, where each sentence has the word and repeated. Like each line of the poem starts with the word and. So and is being repeated in all of these places, right? So example of anaphora. Okay, metonymy, yes. Metonymy is an example of substitution. The first one is synecdoche. In the category of substitution, the second figure of speech is metonymy, right? We'll look at the example. The Kiwis played well in today's match. So Kiwis basically refers to the cricket team of New Zealand. So you have substituted New Zealand's cricket team with the word Kiwis, right? Similarly, the White House wished all Indians on occasion of Diwali. White House refers to who? The President of the USA, right? The decision on the scheme has to be finalized by Delhi. Delhi here refers to the Government of India, right? So this is an example of metonymy, which is also a subcategory of substitution, right? Just like your synecdoche. Then I think there should be the litotes. Litotes. Look at the example, filthy rich, not bad, not without truth. So see, in litotes, how do you figure out what is a litot? You use a negative word to express something that is positive. That is basically the idea of litot, right? So something like this, filthy rich. Filthy rich doesn't have a bad meaning, okay? You're simply trying to use the somebody's richness. I think this question has come up in the forum a couple of times. We have tried explaining it, but people have failed to understand it. Here, what it basically means is the word filthy is used, it's in its original sense of the word, this is a negative word, but the term filthy rich is not used as a negative word. Some people had questions on that. No, filthy rich is not meant to be used in a negative sense. Filthy is basically a negative word, but it is used as an intensifier to show the, the amount of richness that the person has or the kind of money that someone has. Okay. You might have seen a couple of uses in the negative sense here and there, but the actual original use of the word is this, as an intensifier. Same with not bad, right? When you say something is not bad, you're basically saying that is good. Okay. Or when you're saying it is not without truth, you're basically saying that it is true. Right? Or say, when you say I have a bad crush on someone or something, you don't mean it in a negative way. You're saying that you really like something or someone, right? So that is how litotes are used. Hemant, you have a question?
Ma'am, it's a very, I am feeling very difficult to understand, ma'am. So while you are speaking, ma'am, can you please speak slowly, ma'am? That will be helpful, ma'am.
We'll see
Thank
if
you.
we can do that. Okay. So next, any question on litotes, anyone? Understood, no, that part?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So hyperbole is basically a figure of speech that you use to exaggerate something. When you want to exaggerate something, like you want to show intensified meaning of something, then you use hyperbole. Like, say, I died laughing. We know it is an exaggeration because no one dies laughing, right? In the general sense of the term, right? It's not possible. But you use an expression like that to show the intensity of something or an action that has happened. So I died laughing basically means that something was really, really funny, right? That's the meaning. So hyperbole is used when you want to exaggerate, right? Something. Exaggeration basically to intensify, to show the real, feelings or the real intensity of feelings that you felt at that point while you're experiencing something, right? So it's raining cats and dogs. It basically means it's raining heavy, right? There's pin drop silence. This is a very common expression. Died laughing, we discussed this. Waiting forever. Nobody waits forever, but waiting forever basically shows the intensity of the feeling that the person had at that point of time. Okay. Euphemism. basically a kind of figure of speech when you use, when again, when you want to mention something indirectly, something, like a taboo term, something which is considered as a bad word or something, an expression that is considered not good to be used in public, when you have to talk about a situation or a statement or a word like that, which is otherwise taboo or restricted to be used in public, you use euphemistic expressions to talk about it. Like, for example, passed away to talk about someone's death, or guest worker instead of calling someone temporary worker, or downsized from job instead of saying that the person got fired, right? So this is an example of euphemism, and all languages have it, not just English. If we carefully observe our own languages, then we can find a lot of such expressions in our languages as well, right? So some of, continuing with the examples we have here, well-fed instead of saying obese or overweight, right? Outspoken instead of saying bossy. Correctional facility instead of saying jail or personnel. These expressions may not be applicable in all kind of conversations and speech, but in certain situations when you want to tone down your speech, or when you think that the situation is not good enough to talk to directly, then these euphemistic expressions do come to your head. Now, one thing here that you need to keep in mind is that when you're using euphemistic expressions, you need to keep in mind that you use words that are you keep away from words which may be considered a little sensitive for certain categories or community of people. If you find it's going to be problematic in the given situation to use even the euphemistic expressions that you want to use, then think about it and use it wisely, right? Because we know that language is also culturally and socially sensitive. So whenever you use any kind of figure of speech, make sure that you are not uh, hurting the sentiments of any category, whether that is whatever the social categories. Okay, I'm not naming them, whether it's gender or whether it is ethnicity or race or anything. Make sure that you do not use expressions or phrases that may be considered hurtful, okay, to a given community or a social category. Right? So that is the thing with figurative use of language. They really help you make your language impressive and very good. Right? It also makes you sound like a very proficient person. But please be careful about the social labeling and categories as well.
Madam, excuse me. Hello. Hello.
Can you guys hear me? I think I got disconnected for a while in between.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, fine. So I think
Madam,
that's all for. Yeah, go ahead.
can you just provide the link of this recording?
This recording would be updated in your Google Calendar, wherever you access the link for this class. No? So once it is done, maybe in another 2 days or so, it will be updated as a playlist there. So you can access the session from the calendar itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am,
The
please.
recording would be just in the calendar, not on YouTube, right?
This will be found on the calendar only. I don't think it's updated elsewhere, or maybe, yes, I'm not aware of that, but calendar you will get for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
Okay, fine. Then
ma'am,
I'll see you next week. We'll
Ma'am,
do a
please
few.
the link.
Sorry, link for what? The PPT. PPT is there in your, this is the PPT that is available for your lecture. It's already shared with you. You can access it.
Ma'am, YouTube channel I am seeing.
YouTube channel. I don't have the link with me. You can access it again from this calendar itself. Okay.
Ma'am, I'm finding difficulty in light notes. I'm not able to understand what a roundabout mean here.
We'll do a few questions next week. I think it should be okay for you to understand. Maybe, by looking at these questions. Okay.
Okay. And ma'am, will there be sessions like interactive sessions, speeches, and a good community type like it was happened in the English one?
You mean conversation practice?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, fluency.
I
Like
think
I want.
that's right. It won't be available for you. You will get a mail in case whenever they are starting the session. Okay, so you watch out for that. I think whenever the announcement happens, you can do it.
Okay. And what happens in this
Okay, I mean
learn the
that
rope
happens
and to
separately.
sorry?
No, you continue whatever you are asking.
Yeah, I'm just asking about these sessions like tutorial on professional writing, which is going to happen
That's a different kind of
7 to 8.
That's a different kind of session. You get to practice on writing. That follows this one. But that's more like an activity-based session.
And in learn the rope sessions, we'll discuss lecture slides.
We won't discuss it every time. I just discussed figures of speech because I thought it's a little difficult for few people. But usually what we do is we have worksheets, so we solve them in the class, in the session.
Okay, it's like a solve with us session.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, like the previous time, this time also, ma'am, I am facing difficulty. That is in the same time, ma'am. Another class is also there, ma'am. Time class, ma'am.
I know there are some of the people who have wrote to us about it.
I have also sent
But,
to support team, ma'am, regarding this.
and what did they say?
No reply. Just a reply came. We have noted your request in this way. They have sent me.
Okay, so I wouldn't give you too many hopes on the change of timings and all because there are too many parallel sessions running, and the concentration is mostly to keep these sessions in the afternoon so that most people can attend. So in that sense, there could be clashes here and there. You can make your choice as you want, whichever session you want to come to. Otherwise, the recorded sessions are always available. Okay, or if there are specific doubts, then please join for the live session. Changing of the time is a little difficult process for all of us. Okay, not like we have a problem, but then we usually don't keep sessions in the morning or afternoons because people aren't able to attend. That's why. Okay. So let's see. I'll not discourage you, or I don't want to disappoint you. We'll see if there's a possibility of changing it. But mostly, rarely do we get a chance to change the sessions. Okay. The session timings.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. All right, guys. I think we can wind up for today. Next week, we'll do a few questions from this session, and we can practice a little bit and then move on to. But I think by that time, you will have already looked at the week 2 as well. So we can start on clauses also the week after that. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll meet you again next week.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I get the recorded
Thank you,
class?
ma'am.
Okay.